Alright guys, so for those that don't know, I'm a Gen Zer, born in the 2000s, and I've got a very, very curious mind. Like, I've gone on multiple rabbit holes on my channel, anywhere from music, in terms of how the culture was, societal norms, as well as, what else have I just some just general history and stuff like that from back in the day, because I love figuring out more of this stuff. Look, I love truth, I love searching wisdom, and that's exactly why I love doing this kind of stuff. And yeah, today we're going to be checking out the truth about Generation X. Now, of course, I don't know how he's going to tackle this. We haven't seen it before. This is kind of a bland reaction, but I'm very curious to see if it says the truth about Generation X. I'm very curious to learn more about, a lot of you guys are maybe watching. But look, if you guys want to see some more exclusive bonus content from me, guys, consider checking out my Patreon, and links how you can support and donate the channel if you love my content will be in my description below, things like my PayPal. And of course, look, if you love these videos and how I'm going back in time, then continue to smash that like button and let me know what other things you want to check out. But look, guys, with that being said, let's subscribe if you haven't already. And with that being said, let's get straight into this video. Let's go!
We love to talk about the ongoing cultural and economic war between the baby boomers and the millennials, and even the rise of the new Generation Z. But there's one group that's often overlooked in these conversations, and that's Generation X, the ones who grew up between the boomers and millennials, and like many middle children, was overshadowed by both. In this video,
right, okay, because baby boomers, from what I don't know, I did like a World War I, life in the 1930s. I'm pretty sure baby boomers are the ones that came after the war. Either World War I or World War II, along them lines, and the millennials, more to do with the rise of, I don't know. I don't know. What do I know? What do I know? I don't know anything.
I'll cover why Gen X deserves more credit, both good and bad, for quietly changing the world. You're watching Future Now, videos about the future of tech and society. If you were confused...
By the way, guys, you need to check out their channel. And so I'm guessing this one goes out to the Gen Xers, man. Like, let's see the impacts. Why were they overlooked, man?
Used by all these generation names at the start of the video, allow me to break it down for you. The specific years attributed to each generation vary throughout different literature, so I will use the ranges defined by the Pew Research Center. I should also mention that a lot of this video will be focused on the United States population because that's where I am. Obviously, these generations had different experiences in different parts of the world. Baby boomers is the name given to the generation born between 1946 and 1964, so called because they were part of the steep rise in population following World War II, a literal boom in babies born. Up until millennials overtook them, they made up the largest portion of the world population, and as such had an outsized influence on culture, the economy, and politics. Generation X is the population of people born between 1965 and 1980. Appropriately, the X refers to something unknown, the name as resistant to definition as a demographic that carries it. Millennials, I'm sure you've heard of as...
Wow, what do you say? The name for something unknown, the name as resistant to definition as the people that fall under it. But like, that's interesting. Okay, 1965 to 1980, that's Generation X.
Born between 1965 and 1980. Appropriately, the X refers to something unknown, the name as resistant to definition as a demographic that carries it. Millennials, I'm sure you've heard of as the current largest demographic, referring to those born between 1981 and 1996. I made a whole video about millennials and the often repeated phrase that they are killing every industry, so called because they grew up at the turn of the millennium. Lastly, Generation Z is the most recent demographic, those born after 1997. That seems to be the name that's most used so far, although it's still too early to see if it will stick, with other generation names having been used, such as the I generation, referring to this generation growing up with smartphones. Part of the reason I wanted...
1987 though is crazy. I don't think 1987 is correct, though, no? Oh, 1997, okay, I heard it wrong, to present, yeah, okay, so that makes sense. Yeah, I'm a 2000s baby. I think the generation after me is Gen Alpha, by the way. Just, I don't know if not a lot of you guys know, but that's Gen Alpha. That's TikTok generation, iPad warriors. So even I'm looking at that generation like, wow, okay. It's probably how a lot of you guys look at the younger generations. Interesting.
Although it's still too early to see if it will stick, with other generation names having been used, such as the I generation, referring to this generation growing up with smartphones. Part of the reason I wanted to make this video is because when I made my video titled Why Millennials Are Killing Everything, I fell into the same pattern others often do of talking about the tension between baby boomers and millennials while completely overlooking Generation X, the middle child. Baby boomers inherited a country with a booming economy in the US and quickly went to work ruining it along with the environment. They racked up the national debt, burned record amounts of fossil fuels. Many Gen Xers pointed this out in the comments and inspired me to dig a little deeper into why Gen X is rarely discussed in popular media and how, despite this, have actually been and continue to be incredibly influential. Gen Xers overall had a very different experience from their parents growing up, in that during the 60s and 70s, the divorce...
But like, you know, there's a reason why this video got 1.6 million views, and I think it might be one of this guy's most popular videos. So Gen X, there's a lot of you guys here, and you guys definitely have been overlooked by the looks of it, because yeah, this video's going viral. So let's see.
Have actually been and continue to be incredibly influential. Gen Xers overall had a very different experience from their parents growing up, in that during the 60s and 70s, the divorce rate skyrocketed in the US, leading to new family dynamics. And at the same time, it became more common for women to join the workforce rather than stay at home. Because childcare programs were not yet commonplace, many Gen X children spent a lot of their time with little to no adult supervision, as their parents were at work when they got out of school. That's why some use the phrase latchkey generation to refer to this demographic cohort. A latchkey kid is one who comes home alone after school because their parents are at work. The name refers to the key the kids carried with them or got from under the mat or the porch to open the door. Their adolescence was a tumultuous time in the United States, with an ongoing crack epidemic, an increase in violent crime, and the emergence of the AIDS epidemic. At the same time, this was one of the most diverse generations in history, thanks in part to an increase in immigration and the first generation to grow up post-integration after the end to the racist Jim Crow laws. In their youth, the media...
On my channel as well, I'm currently doing this, so I'm learning more about the Jim Crow laws. I'm also learning a bit more about slavery. So it's like, and I'm also learning more about the culture. So it's like, a lot of this stuff is like, I'm getting all this information from all different areas. Even the stuff like, I remember doing these, like, you know, live during the 1970s. I feel like a lot of you Gen Xers will talk about how you'd go outside. Your parents didn't even want you in the house. You'd be outside until like the night, and you'll come back before the street lamps turn off, type thing. Like, that's just unheard of in this day and age. At least you got technology that can let you know where people are, so it's a bit different. But yeah, the Gen Xers, man, like, from what he's saying, I think, on what I've heard, it seems to be the case.
Characterized Gen X as disaffected, apathetic, cynical, and slackers. They were the MTV generation, lived through the rise of music videos, grunge music, and hip-hop. They were rebellious and reluctant to grow up. But eventually, we all have to become adults, and when Gen Xers did, they proved everyone wrong about the stereotypes they were boxed into. Sure, your Gen X dad probably still wears his Nirvana t-shirt every now and then, but does he still have that teen spirit? Sorry, I tried to come up with a Nirvana joke, but that failed. Never mind. According to a Stanford University study, Gen X youth were indeed more cynical and disaffected than previous generations were in their youth. But they also found that all generations were more cynical and disaffected during this time period, meaning it wasn't a uniquely Gen X phenomenon. In fact, perhaps the latchkey generation learned to work hard and be independent by being unable to rely as much on their parents, and that's what led to their success as adults. Millennials and Gen Z are often defined by their affinity for the internet and technology, but Generation X were actually the first to grow up with computers and video games at home. Generation X grew up to become the founders of the modern Silicon Valley tech industry and led the country's economic recovery of the 1990s. Their previously negatively spoken about rebelliousness and disdain for authority actually spurred innovation and disruption of many industries. It's weird to think of Jeff Bezos, on the cusp of Gen X, as a disaffected young person leading a revolution against traditional retail giants, when he's now the richest man on earth and seen by many of today's youth as representing corporatism incarnate. In fact, some of today's most well-known leaders fall into the Gen X range. Elon Musk, Larry Page, Susan Wojcicki, Johnny Ive, Justin Trudeau, and ironically Jay-Z. Let me know what other notable Gen Xers you can think of in the comments.
So shout out to those Gen X as well, because there's some big names in there, man, and to this day, man, it's still causing shockwaves, man.
Ironically Jay-Z. Let me know what other notable Gen Xers you can think of in the comments. It turns out that disrupting the status quo is a pretty good business model and a great engine for innovation. Because Gen Xers grew up in an analog world before the personal computer, they have a unique perspective on how to bridge the past with our future. I believe this is a key behind their success, but also why they seem to be overlooked today. Most people now take for granted the major changes made by Gen Xers. Gen Xers were the first gamers, choosing to stay home playing with their Atari and Nintendo video game systems. The Gen X demand for VHS tapes to watch their favorite movies and shows at home whenever they want has evolved into today's streaming services like Netflix and Hulu. Gen Xers were also the first to start blogging about their lives, and Ze Frank pioneered vlogging before YouTube was even a thing with the show.
Good morning, it's Monday, March 20th. I haven't showered and my breath smells like a poodle crapped in my mouth. Let's be friends as I tell you everything that you need to know about today. It's just like TV, but with pimples.
And despite millennials being inextricably linked to social media, it was actually Gen Xers who founded some of the very first platforms like MySpace, Twitter, and Friendster, which Zuckerberg later used as an inspiration for Facebook. The real test of Generation X, however, is really starting to take shape now as more and more of them take over the highest positions of leadership in the corporate and political world. Will they follow in the footsteps of the baby boomers, who largely use their power to feed their own self-interests, or will they be more conscious of their ability to change the world for the better? Early indications show that some of the companies and culture changes led by Gen X could prove problematic. The most obvious one being how the social internet is affecting us on an individual level, how we relate to one another, and ultimately our politics. Of course, the biggest offender seems to be Facebook right now, and that's led by a millennial. Silicon Valley has largely gone unchecked for the last couple of decades, but we're starting to see a shift in this with laws like GDPR in the European Union and the increasingly common hearings of tech CEOs before Congress. To prove themselves different from baby boomers, Generation X will have to show that they are willing to regulate the economic powerhouses they've created in a socially responsible way. If you liked or hated this video, you'll enjoy my videos on millennials. Hit subscribe and the bell to be notified when I post a new video and to vote on what the next video will be on.
Yo, shout out to this guy, man. Yeah, check out this other channel, man. That was an interesting video. Look, I'm curious to see what the comments are saying right now. As a Gen X person, I don't really mind being overlooked. The drama of today's world is so tiring. Wow, and that's the top comment. That's interesting. So maybe there's a section of you guys that actually doesn't mind being overlooked. You kind of like being in the middle and not kind of. Yeah, okay. I'm Gen X and I'm happy to be left alone. We were 30 at 10 and still 30 at 50. Wow, because you have to grow up fast, right? That's interesting that people are commenting like that. No cell phones, Instagram or Facebook. We held up lit Bic lighters at a concert, not phones. Wow, not iPhones. We danced around anyone without anyone filming us and preferred it that way. Yeah, so you know, you guys, I don't know, a lot of the Gen Xers, a lot of you guys watching. Okay, I'm very curious. Like, you guys want to let me know. Do you guys like the fact that you guys were kind of like overlooked, or do you guys like the idea of, even though they shouldn't be overlooked because you guys are probably the most influential generation, or could end up being the most influential generation in the last 100 years, let's say. I mean, because the baby boomers, I guess he said, ended up ruining the economy, as he said. Is the Gen X that laid the foundation that saved the economy, and are they going to continue to improve things as time goes on? Obviously, my generation, we talk about Gen Z, I literally have no faith. I think, okay, let me not say it. Maybe I could be the difference. I feel like maybe I could be the difference. I don't know. Who knows? Some of you guys say that I give you hope in terms of people from my age. I don't know. Maybe some of you guys disagree. But either way, I can't imagine my generation as adult. I can't even imagine like myself as an adult. No, then again, I can. No, I can. No, I definitely can. But I can't imagine a lot of my Gen Z friends as adults, man. Like, I don't know. And let alone the generation below me. I don't know. This is just me thinking out loud right now. 3 for 4. But guys, like, made this point, comment on the blue heart, so I know who my real ones are, and I know who didn't just skip off as soon as the video ended. And let me know what you thought about this video in general and what I had to say and what the guy had to say. And if you guys agree or disagree, I'll be very curious. And yeah, guys, with that being said, look, I'm your boy Jay Flex. This has been the Truth About Generation X. And for those of you guys that made this point, you guys have been absolutely wonderful. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.